Hello, everybody. We are here at the Sound of Inbound, and you don't have to Google far to learn about the next person on our podcast. We are very excited to have a very, very special guest from a company you might have heard of.
Google.
And you might have heard of a couple of products the guy has worked on.
Oh, I don't know, just like Gmail or
YouTube.
just and like anything that Alphabet does.
Yeah, I mean, a lot that Alphabet does. That's right. So we are joined today by Robert Youmans. He is the UX lead director, I believe, of Google's Workspace, and he also happens to be the site lead of the campus here in Durham, North Carolina. We are very, very fortunate to have him here on the show, and he's going to be a lot of fun.
He's going to be so fun. I think it's so cool that someone that like went to a rival high school of mine and went to my same alma mater is that UX lead at Google, and they do all this work right here in Durham.
Shout out to NC State. Go
Go back, go back.
Yeah. So we are going to have a whole bunch of conversations with Robert about his origin story and what kind of things influence his UX work that he does at Google every single day, and where he thinks the world's going to be going next.
Yeah, and it's going to just go so fast. I'm sure it's going to be really interesting to see how he thinks things are going to change tomorrow and 3 months from now and a year from now.
Yes. So please join us here on The Sound of Inbound for Robert Youmans. He's got a lot of great things to say. He also has great hair, so not too shabby to look at, too. Yeah, so stay tuned here on The Sound of Inbound. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Sound of Inbound. Today, we are joined by a very, very, very special guest. He's the UX director for Google Workspace and the campus site lead for Google's Durham, North Carolina office. He's led UX and research for products used by literally millions every single day. And I'm talking about things like YouTube and Gmail and Slides and Google Meet and many, many other tools. We also learned through our research that he's helped establish Google's first design apprenticeship in Switzerland, bridging industry and education in a way that is extremely inspiring, and it perfectly reflects his career. And he brings, of course, a deep human-centered perspective on how digital products are built at scale. So I would love for all of you to please join me in giving a warm, warm welcome to our next guest. Actually, it's here very cold in North Carolina, so please make that a warm, warm welcome for our next guest here on The Sound of Inbound, Robert Youmans. Robert, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you having you here on the show.
Thanks for that warm introduction. It is cold here.
So I thought we should start off with everybody getting to know you, because you are in an amazing position at Google now, but you've had a very interesting background and you've bounced all over the planet. So I thought maybe you could just start off where, I think actually, if I remember correctly, you started off here in North Carolina at one point when you were younger. But give us the background from where you started.
So I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which I did not live there very long. And my parents did move a lot, so I bounced around. But yeah, I landed in North Carolina when I was 8 and grew up in North Raleigh, went to Millbrook High School. I attended NC State University. At the time, I was studying mechanical engineering. I didn't finish that degree. I got 3.5 years in and I panicked and I didn't want to be a mechanical engineer anymore. There's a funny story associated with that.
Oh, tell us what's the funny story there.
Okay. The funny story is I had a friend who was 1 year ahead of me, also a mechanical engineer. He graduated and he got a job. Have you ever been in a gas station and seen the square crackers that come in like there's like 6 of them and they're wrapped in cellophane?
Of course.
Yeah. He got a job working on the drum that puts peanut butter on those crackers. We were on a phone call and he was like, yeah, I got this job, man. And it's really great. And I'm trying to increase the efficiency of peanut butter on these And I just thought, man, I can't do this. I can't work in a cracker factory.
And that would freak you out.
Yeah, it was like, it's like a flashbulb memory of this. I was taking like psychology classes also at the time, cognitive psychology. And so I ended up taking a bunch more of those and graduating with a psych degree. And then later on, when I went back to school, studied experimental psychology, and kind of with an eye on how do we combine the things I liked about mechanical engineering and design with psychology. And that's my backstory.
When you were in school, did you know about user experience design?
Definitely not. No, definite when I was an undergrad, I had no understanding, and I had friends that were, going to work in cracker factories. I also I also had friends that were, in the School of Design, and I actually remember being very jealous of what they were working on because I was like, "Oh, it's I think that's more what I am sort of naturally drawn to is sort of like the design of things versus the mechanics of things." But I didn't I didn't really have any classes on design in high school. I just went to kind of a public high school, go Millbrook, and they didn't have anything like that. The term user experience was, I think, coined by Donald Norman. You know what? That same year, Ariana Grande was born. And so UX is as old as Ariana Grande. That gives you some sense of the newness of this. And I don't remember exactly what year that is, but I don't think it had happened yet. And so, no, in undergrad, no. And then by grad school, I took a couple years off, lived in Europe, wrote as a ghostwriter for the Dutch government, then went
Did
back
not know
to
this part. That's fantastic. You were a writer.
I was a writer, yeah. I wrote a newsletter on Dutch infrastructure, for a woman named Miriam. I think her name was Miriam Schwartz, and she was the Minister of Transportation for the Netherlands. I had never been to the Netherlands. I had never I didn't know much about any of this stuff,
It's
but
actually a great country, and I've been there numerous times. We've had clients that are there. Been to
I have been there
Amsterdam.
subsequently, but at the time I had never had the pleasure. And so, yeah, so, but and that's a whole nother story, but I wound up writing for this woman and I was working in London and writing as though I was this Dutch woman. So, yeah. Anyway, went back to grad school. I went to first Wake Forest University, also in North Carolina. I can't say enough good things about Wake Forest. Incredible education, incredible opportunity to go there. Worked with, I think he's now the chair of the department. Eric Stone was my advisor. He is a psychologist that studies how people make decisions. So I spent 2 years thinking about feedback and decision making, and how people's decisions can be bent one way or the other depending on the information they're given. Very interesting. And then from there, I went to the University of Illinois Chicago and got a PhD studying with a guy named Stellan Olson. This is important because Stellan Olson was one of the first people that studied machine learning in the design of intelligent tutoring systems. So now this is the part, you asked before, did I know what I was doing? No. But I was trying to hone in on and get closer to people that were interested in human machine interaction. And so this is a form of human machine interaction, this intelligent tutoring stuff. He is a Swedish psychologist. He had come up in Europe, and the standards and the ways in which graduate training are done in Europe they're not entirely foreign to the US system, but they're a little bit different. And so he had a lot of patience for me to kind of explore. In America, typically you would go work with someone and you're like you are an apprentice basically, and you're doing exactly what they're doing. And then you get to deviate ever so slightly as you approach graduation. With Stellan, he was very tolerant of me deviating pretty widely, actually. And so that program required you to do a breadth requirement, which I thought was a really amazing aspect of the PhD training. So they basically say, hey, you have to diverge a little bit. Most people would diverge by taking like an exotic statistics or something like this. And I finally got a chance to do industrial design, which is what I had been jealous of as an undergrad. And so I took 2 years of industrial design training, which became immensely helpful after graduation.
Mechanical engineering with psychology, industrial design, and then you're also getting a chance to explore the world a bit by not just being on the East Coast, but being in the Midwest. I think at one point you said, I think I looked at your background, you were also teaching on the West Coast as well.
Yeah, I've taught twice on the West Coast. So after I got my PhD, I received a faculty offer from Cal State Northridge, CSUN, which is in the valley outside of Los Angeles, and I took that and worked there for 4 years, and then jumped from there to George Mason University, which had a concentration in folks that did what I do. So I worked there for basically another 4 years, and then I was hired by Google. But whilst at Google, I taught at UC Berkeley in their School of Information for 2 years. I taught a graduate design seminar there. So, yeah, and I've taught at SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design. I've given some guest lectures in Zurich, where I eventually wound up for the last 6 years until I moved here.
So I'm going to say personally, from Aaron's perspective, I feel like our user experience is in good hands for Google because having that diversity of perspectives is extremely important to understand all those different users you have to consider every single day. And I can't imagine the kind of personas. Like when we talk to our clients about the marketing that we do in life sciences, we're trying to narrow it down to like 1, 2, maybe 3 personas. And we get mad if we're like more than that. We're like, too much. We got to really narrow it down. I can't imagine how many different kinds of situations and personas that you guys get into. I wanted to just also kind of get back to your origins for a moment and just talk about the fact that you got to be, I think we're in similar age groups. So you and I got to see technology evolve with us in a way that I'm not sure if other generations will ever get to see. It's like I was always fascinated by people born in like the 1850s, 1870s, and then, survived and lived through the turn of the century and even watched an airplane take off. Like, it's like, it must have been mind boggling to go from, horse and buggy and no electricity, and then all the way to something where you have this moment where technology is now all around you and electricity is there. And, just the think about what you and I have seen, it's just incredible, isn't it?
It is. I mean, in that story I told, I was on an old-fashioned copper-lined telephone talking to my friend working in the cracker factory.
Oh, when he was like,
yeah. And then flash forward a couple of years, not that many years, and I'm at Wake Forest. And when it was, I think the last year that they did this, but when I would do statistical analyses, I had to actually do the analyses on a computer, then send them to a mainframe. That makes me sound older than I am, honestly. But that was still how they were doing it there, because local machines couldn't do the statistics we were doing. And then, here we are. Very interesting, still pretty recent event was when the pandemic occurred. I was in Switzerland, and, I remember really thinking, I'm not sure if Google can work completely out of the office, because we had a really strong office culture. I mean, the whole office at Google is designed for that, right? It's communal spaces, micro kitchens, like it's great. You couldn't find probably a company that was more devoted to like in-person collaboration, working together. So this was the opposite of that. Like, we're all going to just start working from home with no notice, almost no notice, right? I mean, I was skiing with my team at an offsite, and I got a text message from security, and they're like, we're locking the office down and we don't know when you'll be able to come back in. And I was thinking, like, this could be weeks, and then it was like 2 years later, we're going back into the office or whatever.
So the thing about our generations are that I feel like we got a lot of opportunities by proxy. It's like, I don't think the opportunities I would be given, I don't think I would have gotten the same opportunities today that I got back then. I happened to be standing in the right place at the right time. And that was because of the human interaction and being there to get opportunities with the School of the Arts and UNC and building the first websites and just all these kinds of things that I got kind of thrown at, almost thrown the book at me. Actually, do you remember a company called Corel Web Design?
No, I don't.
Yeah, it's exactly. I was working for the provost, and he and I went over to Circuit City, also RIP Circuit City. And he's like, I think the school's we're going to need a website, and nobody's willing to take that leap, and I'm going to want you to do it. And so I'm like, let's do it. So he went with me to Circuit City, and we're looking through the books. There were books at Circuit City, and he hands me this book on Corel Web Design. He's like, read this and build UNC's school's first website. I'm like, okay. So we just did it. It's like, I don't know if that kind of trust is out there anymore, but that's the kind of stuff that when you're in the early days of, and this is hopefully what we'll get to in the second half of this podcast, is when you get in the early days of a certain kind of technology, everything is open for opportunity. Like, let's go for it, jump in. And you are like an avid learner, and you've been part of the educational institutions for years. And I'm sure that component of like being so hungry to learn has helped so much on the opportunity front for you to just be like, what about this? Let's be curious about that. Let's try this. Let's try that. And I think that's probably why you've been getting all these opportunities all along, right?
I mean, 100%. Like, it's my best quality. And we probably have this in common. But I mean, I know lots of people that are like this, that are just really curious people, and it's not, I mean, I am definitely not the world's best designer or the world's best scientist or the world, best educator, but I am curious. And it's a combination of like leaning in and being interested in how things work, and luck. Yeah,
I hate to say it, but you have to give yourself enough opportunities to find that luck too. So I think for those that
I
actually
know,
put
and
the
that's true. Right? You're not going to get lucky, sitting in your room alone. But yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So I was going to just finish by saying, there are a lot of cool things that you and I have gotten to do over the years. And I was wondering, just from your standpoint, I think I could possibly give my quick story on it. But when was the first time you realized what Google was and you started using it? Because when I did it the first time, Ask Jeeves was around. Anybody out there that wants to comment? Ask Jeeves was around, and I think a couple other ones that are probably just hysterically named. Anyway, I just remember it thinking, what a weird name, Google. And it feeling very academic in the beginning, very like this is just really an experiment. And it had that I feel lucky button on it, feeling lucky, dude. And I just remember thinking about Clint Eastwood. First time I read it, like feeling lucky.
as though Clint Eastwood had a gun trained on you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That was my. But at the time, it's like you think about when that was first out there. There were all these pop culture references, and it wasn't like we had access to all the things we have to do today. So when I read it the first time, I'm like, what a weird button, and I loved it. It was just like, where's that going to take me next? So I would just like kind of click it and see what happens. But it was really kind of a very strange and considering all things, we were so focused on getting the domains at the time. Domains were just such a huge, like almost like a form of currency. It's like, can you buy these domains fast enough at this one critical moment? But then Google came out and it was like this other thing. I'm like, well, that's cool and refreshing, but very academic. So what was your experience with it?
My first that I can remember is Gmail. I'm sure that I had used the Google search function because I was in grad school. Oh, well, you know what? Actually, one of the first, I remember this. So I mentioned, I'm at Wake Forest. I'm doing my master's thesis, and I'm still walking over to the beautiful library and going into the basement, which was where psychology journals were kept, and reading articles, like looking up the article and then photocopying the article to make, so that I had a copy and then putting that into a binder and blah, blah, blah. And I remember I left there, went to Chicago, and we were in an office, behavioral sciences building. And when I got there, they had the University of Illinois had just deprecated like the physical periodicals on psychology. And psychologists in my department had said, well, what are you going to do with them? And they're like, I guess we're going to throw them out. And they had moved them all into my office. So my office was actually like a
Stacks of
combination.
books?
Yeah, it was just stacks of periodicals, dating back to the 1920s, on shelves. And we were kind of working in between. It was kind of like we were working in a library, except that makes it sound good, and it was not good. And the reason for that was because of Google Scholar, which I still use. And I don't know if you use that at all or very often, Aaron.
I
But
have
Google
used
Scholar,
it. I have used it. Yes.
yeah, so that's a version of Google Search, but only for peer-reviewed articles. And what I remember thinking was, I immediately went and I started looking up, because I was very familiar with a certain area of psychological literature because of me just doing this master's thesis, and I was still publishing the master's thesis, so I was still in the mix on that, and looking them up just to see and noticing that, okay, some of them were available and there were like PDFs, and then others weren't. And I remember thinking, this is going to change science, because people are going to be, too lazy to go to the library if one's available at the click of a button and the other you have to go to a library, go to the basement, go find the thing, photocopy. Man, like those articles are going to be the ones that are more read. They're going to be the ones that are then therefore more cited. The other ones go into history. These ones become the prominent, and that totally happened. Like that 100% happened. And I can't remember the last time, even as a faculty member. I remember one time, because it was so rare, looking for a book, right? An actual physical book, but that's it. I never, ever, I don't think, went back to the library to look for peer-reviewed articles ever again to this day.
That's amazing. So one of the things that I did, and I feel like I was like really trying to force it manually, because I wish we had Google back then. When I was at the School of the Arts and I was building that website, the thing that was frustrating me the most was that I could not read about the classes that I wanted to sign up for through the website. The websites at the time were very brochure web. So if you went to literally any famous university, it would just tell you, here we are. Maybe there's a campus map if you're lucky, how to get a hold of them, how to apply. And I went over to the registrar's office and I picked up the registrar book, which is this massive book. And I just said, how did you guys print this? And they said, we have to type it all up. It's, we have to type all these documents. I'm like, could I have those documents? And they're like, why would you want them? I'm like, because I want to put it on something called a website. And they're like, why would you want to do that? And they just kept like challenging me. Yeah. And so it took a lot of discussion to convince them to give me the registrar content. And then I started going around to every office on campus and I just said, I need a quick summary of what you do here at the school. And I want to put that on something called a website. And everybody was just like, why would anybody want to see this stuff? And it was trying to flip the book on, we're not just this logo of a school. People would really want to learn about us. And I felt like that was a very important tool, that I thought this website would be an important tool for people that would be assessing the school, or for students that just want to know what classes they would take. Oh my God, it took me a year to like get all this stuff typed up or moved over and interviewing all the offices. And I was the boots on the ground. I was basically like the Google Maps car that drives around the entire country.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I had to force it. And it was all for the end point of trying to make the user experience for our website to be a real win-win for us. Like, you don't have to call us. You don't have to like beg to have somebody send you this 18-pound book, it felt like, just to know what classes you're going to take. And that for me, at the time, again, I was just at the right place at the right time. And I was willing to do the work. While I was going to school for music, I decided to do this on the side. But that really got me hooked on the value of the internet. And when I saw what Google had done with the search and, of course, building out all these tools, which we're going to get to in the second half, I do think that was just mind-boggling for me that there was other organizations that were thinking like I was. I didn't know that existed. And that's what the internet kind of opened up for me. Yeah.
I can't help but notice, maybe it's the psychologist in me, but when you tell that story, you tell it like you had a lot of fun doing that.
I did, because I got to learn who the people were. There was a personality that didn't come through anything. Like, I even went over to the police chief. Like, nobody would talk to that guy. That was the campus police chief. The guy just sat in an office in a tiny little building, and they had a bunch of cars out front. And he was so surprised I cared. And that just all of a sudden got me thinking around, everybody that's here has a real role and there's real people behind it. The technology isn't faceless. And actually today, okay, this is a good transition. Google isn't faceless, and you bring a very human, as I said earlier, very human-centered approach to the work that you do. And I thought maybe in the second half of our little podcast here, we could talk all about Google and AI. Would you be up for that?
I would be up for that.
All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about all things coming up next. And we're going to hopefully predict the future of what browsers will be. So stay tuned. Hi, everybody. We are back here with Robert. We're going to be here on the second half of the podcast. We're going to be looking ahead at the future of the internet, because, if there's one organization out there that can seriously inspire and potentially influence where we go next, it's the Goog. Do you guys ever call yourself the Goog? I don't know. I'm going to call you guys. That's not a term. That's not a term we're walking around with every day.
The Goog. I think
the Goog.
My mother-in-law might call me that sometimes, but
I think it's the. I think I get that from the NASDAQ listing. I think it's GOOG. Right. Yeah. So I'm calling it the Goog. But I'm having a lot of fun here with Robert, and we were talking over the break about, where things could go next. One of the things I did talk to him about, though, before the podcast was the term browser. I really think that we have to come up with some other terminology about how we interact with AI, because in the world of browsers, you do kind of browse. You don't have to actually do much to just start looking around, clicking around, exploring, and be in that explorer mindset. And nowadays, we're moving into this different world, aren't we? So what do we call it? So I don't know if you want to start there, Robert. That's probably a big brain squeezer for both of us on a Friday morning.
A hard transition from...
It's a hard transition, yeah.
Reminiscing about the past to the future of browser. You did mention that before, so I was thinking a little bit, and probably just because I was talking about Stellan Olson, my old PhD advisor, it does feel as though, there is a tutelage or tutor, like, I don't know, like there's a learning that seems to go on with generative AI, at least for parts of it. that I'm seeing a lot of, or we see a lot of in terms of how people are using it. So, you were talking about spending time with users, and you're the police chief and all of that. And I get to do that in my role as well, just really cool. And it seems like when you meet people that are leaned in on AI, generative AI specifically, that they're doing one of two things. They're either trying to eliminate something that they don't like doing, typically at school, or at work, or in adulting, like taking care of the chores around the house. They're either trying to get rid of something that's very tedious, or they're trying to do something. I'll use the word creative. It might not be, making art, but they might be making a song, or making music, or making a film, or making a document, or having to write a sales report and trying to make people pay attention to it, or do a clever marketing pitch for something and they want it to stand out, or and actually in a lot of those latter ones, the more work activities, there's actually probably a little bit of both. Like the AI might be helping you do something that's tedious whilst also helping you create. And so we see people kind of attracted to those two qualities. And then a third emergent quality is between the tedium and the creativity. There's sort of a learning that's happening, and there's sort of internally in my team, we tend to call that enablement. And so people are actually winding up kind of trying to do, and I think you would like this a lot, I like this a lot, they're kind of they're like enabled to try to do new types of jobs that maybe they couldn't before because they didn't know how to code, let's say, or they didn't know how to draw, or they didn't know how to read music, or they didn't know how to play a guitar. But now they can kind of do those things with a little help from AI. And so it's this reduction of tedium, a creative partner, and an enablement of new ways of expression. Anyway, they also like cheat on math.
Well, for those that know what they're doing, though, I think
Yeah.
it's almost like a renaissance again. That
Yeah.
we can find opportunities we didn't even know we could be a part of, or we can explore, because it is such a great enablement tool. I see that. So were you going to call it an enablementer instead of a browser? An enabler. I think that's
Yeah,
the
what did you call the music this morning? You said it was we were talking about the theme music for the show.
yeah.
It's a multiplier, or there's
A
like
force oh, it's a it's a force multiplier. That's a good cue.
It's a force multiplier.
Plier. It's just like when we want to think outside of the box.
Let's play out of
So yes, I'm definitely in the realm of a very explorer mindset, and I want to be using tools that could be that force multiplier for sure. I'm definitely in that.
And
camp.
something else that you said in the first half of the show is I think you said this was like there's almost like this democratization or something. I think what you meant by that is like it's a free for all, like it's anyone's ball game, like those types of things where like all bets are off. I can't think of any more sayings about this, but like when the web started, and it's like who's going to make websites, and you're like, I guess I'll make
Anybody.
a website. Yeah, anybody.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Is it literally like anyone that wants to put in some effort can probably do it? I feel like we're in another. I like that about technology. I find that hopeful about technology, that with each new type of technology, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit, and it kind of lets people that want to try. There's actually you can gain a lot of ground if you want to try to learn this right now. Because nobody knows what the next browser is going to be. Exactly.
Yeah, so I think on that topic, from your perspective, which I know has inspiration influence from your job too, but it's the I think we talked about this too beforehand, so I think I prepped you for this. It's the absence of UX. It's the absence of UI. Maybe it's not the absence of UX. Maybe that's not incorrect. It's an incorrect way to say it, but like the absence of UI. I was always very fascinated about designing these experiences for these websites. And I think we're getting back into a place where maybe the people who finally do arrive at a website and they're going to spend the time there are highly qualified leads that are very savvy, very invested in learning all about a business. So when they do come there, I feel like let's make it as human of an experience as possible and really get them engaged. We want to make it as sticky as possible. Again, sound of inbound. But when it comes to these AI tools, there's an absence of UI. And I'm wondering how you're managing that now.
I mean, it's very tricky, I would say, Aaron. Like, again, all bets are kind of off, it feels like. And so we're trying to go back to base principles, talk to users, look at ways people are using this technology, and then start again. I was telling my team about this the other day, but like in architecture, there's this, what would you call it? Like a sign for a problem that's been solved. I think it's an exclamation point that they put on things. So like the height of a wall in a garden should be X feet tall. And if you're writing this in architecture, you write it and then you put an exclamation point, and it kind of means like, don't mess with this because this is the height of this wall. We've established this over centuries.
Doesn't that work in code too? When you're actually putting something that's a priority of a code, it actually snaps to the top when you put an exclamation point on it. Isn't that part of coding?
Maybe that's true. And maybe that's why. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. I don't know if that connects the dots.
And there's examples of this in UX as well. The classic example is like, I think, let's see, I was reading a book about this. The classic example, I think, is the shopping cart. Like, that's been solved for. People know how to do e-commerce. Don't try and reinvent the shopping cart. Just copy the way shopping carts work everywhere. And so it's just easier for everybody. With this new technology, there's like no exclamation points. Nothing's been solved. And it's just Wild West again. And it's like, do you use skeuomorphism? Do you use and it's much more about language, because we're going to a language-based interface. And so, yesterday I was looking at a new feature for docs, and we were looking at the UI, because there is some UI in docs. There's, a lower panel and a side panel today. That'll probably be out of date by the time people hear this. And we were looking at the memory of generative AI if you type something in the lower box versus the side box. And these are very senior people at Google doing what's called a bug bash, where we're like, we're going to ship this, but are we really, really, really sure it's going to work well? Let's kick the tires. And we're all, imagine a bunch of older folks like me kicking the tires.
Let's try it one more time. Let's just
let's just do what? Are we really sure? And kind of trying to break it, basically. And we noticed a couple of things. And some of the things that we noticed during the bug bash had less to do with the model quality, had less to do with the UX even, or the UI and the user experience of that UI, but it had more to do with what we were calling things. So a lot of this stuff was like, let's just format the page. And so I was like, format it like a scientific article, format it like a book report, format it like something else. And then I said, no, I think I liked the original best. Go back to that. Original for you and me means, like
whatever you first started with, right?
Didn't work.
It didn't work.
It didn't work. Instead, it generated a new original. It tried again. And so it generated a fourth version that was like the original.
I'm having exactly the same example from last night. I'm working on a proposal, and I wanted to have it double check. It's doing some really interesting things, though, to your credit, on the Gemini side of things. I created a document, and I was pasting some things in from other places, and it scanned the entire document. It said, hey, in this one section, you have an end quote. That's not supposed to be there. It's finding little tiny things that were like, hey, this formatting thing is a little off. You should put an extra paragraph break here. I thought that was amazing. But when I kept working on it, trying to get it refined, it started to, I think it's called hallucinate. It started to remove the original reference. Like, I had worked on a section that I was happy with, but as I continue iterating on it, it removed it. And so I was like, we're going to go back to what you just said, original. I'm like, I think I used those words. I need you to go back to the original statement I provided to you. And that needs to be back in the next statement. And then, of course, because it wants to make me happy, I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'm like, where were you a second ago? I didn't need to tell you this. Like, why do I have to double check you? Yeah. So What was the output from the bug bash?
Some of the senior engineers were on the call, and we flag when we find things like this, and then they go and they do a deep dive and try and fix it, and they fix it. And there were some other things as well. That's an example where the model was kind of falling down because it didn't understand original, or the nuances around original aren't quite there. But there was another example just where in the UI we said, I'm trying to remember. It's important to remember the exact turns of phrase that we were using, but essentially it implied that if you asked it to do something in the side panel where we're interfacing with Gemini, that it would drop whatever you did into the doc. That's how it's like, what do you want to do with this doc? Maybe let's say what's happening on the back end is it's actually looking at your prompt and trying to make a determination whether or not you're asking it just for some general information, like how do you spell cheese or something, or you want it to act on the document that you're looking at. The way that we had set the prompt up, we had asked it, what do you want to do with the doc? But it was still giving us back things in the side panel. And we pointed out that again, like people probably get it, but it seems like everything that you would ask this interface should be doing something in the doc. That's what we told people it would do. So it's kind of weird that it sometimes doesn't put things into the doc, right? It's just a lot of like little language things like that.
And they're small little moves, right? There's small little moves that can make huge impacts.
But then you think, and I think you said this before, like you think about how many people this will affect. And, kind of statistically, how many people will get confused by that. And you can, very easily, inadvertently introduce a lot of friction into people's lives at work, or at home or wherever they're using
orange, not blue.
Yeah. So it's exciting to be able to, and, I think that little anecdote shows you like the level, and that's after things have been through rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of testing and code, and user research and design reviews and everything else, but you can still kind of find them, and we really, and then after things are released, we continue to get feedback. You've probably taken some of our little surveys that we launch, in the product itself, and we're monitoring that, and there's social media monitoring to see if people are complaining on social media about things, and on and on and on. And so it never really ends. We continue to kind of refine and improve the technology.
But you need to. Yeah, you got to keep refining that point. I was going to think for a second on a compelling front. Are there people that have just been born that may never know email? Because when I think about the Google tool set, in the way that you're describing it right now, the tool is primary and the AI is additive as a secondary layer. And I'm wondering at some point if that will reverse.
Yes. That would be my number one prediction. I don't know what the future is going to be like, and I'd be a fool if I tried to predict it. But I do feel like at some point, your primary interface will definitely be with some type of generative AI that then calls upon email and docs and sheets and slides and drive and everything else to help you work, or to help you help you achieve tasks that you're trying to do, be they work or creative or whatever. And probably you'll still go to email occasionally, but probably less, right?
Yeah, it's remarkable because like right now I feel like some feedback for Google, I'll just quickly say, is you're adding Gemini to everything. And actually, in one of my interfaces, I think I have maybe 2 or 3 Gemini buttons.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're okay.
Kidding.
We're Gemini everything. And that to me is like you're trying to figure out where it's going to fit and where the people are going to explore using it more so. And I think there's probably a hesitancy to trust it at this point and not really know. I feel like for people like you and I, we love the blank piece of paper. So like, give that to me. I want to start with nothing and I want to build something up that's really interesting. And I would use these tools to kind of help me out. Whereas a lot of other people do not want that. And I would say the majority of the population doesn't want to start with a blank piece of paper. It's scary. When I think about these tools, I kind of wonder how everybody else will perceive them, because right now we're starting in Gmail with the additive layer, but eventually we would just tell these systems what we're looking to do and how to send the communication, and it would figure out the most efficient way to build that communication and send it. That's the remarkable part to me. And I think you and I are going to get to see that day, because it seems like things are just happening fast. Like, where do you think we're going to be in 6 months from now?
Well, a couple of things about that. One is, I think it's really easy to kind of jump back and forth between the ends of the spectrum, where you're like, oh, some of this stuff will never get launched, or a skepticism. And then it's also really easy to think like everything's going to be different in 6 months. And I don't like I think we were talking about this the other day, Aaron, but like I still have this like browser called browser, and still full of tabs. And like, I've got like 50 tabs open right now on Chrome. And so that hasn't changed that much since I joined Google 11 years ago. So that's the slow part, where I'm like, it won't be that different in 6 months. But then on the other hand, there's a bunch of stuff that's really, really different, right? The flavor of that is quite different. I don't think we still have that. Do you feel lucky, or are you feeling
I
like
know,
anything?
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a super quick story about that. You asked me about Google and when I first found Google and all that, and I was in grad school and it was Gmail. But do you remember you had to like get an invitation from someone else who already had Gmail to get Gmail?
Yes, I of course remember this.
There's little elements of Google that I would call that a Google culture thing that's kind of like that, do you feel lucky button? And I was talking to the other day to the designer about this. Like the through line between that button that you're talking about, the lucky button, and the company today, you still can see sometimes. And I'll tell you like a
Nano
real
banana? I think I was gonna
yeah,
go with
that
nano
would be
banana.
a really good example. Nano
Yeah, or
banana, right? Like what the heck is that?
the hell is a nano banana? Yeah,
In fact, you know what, man? Like I struggle to talk to people about work sometimes because I'm like, wait, I call it something internally, Nano Banana. And is that what we actually launched, or is that like just some dumb code
and then
name
you're
that
in
we
a
use?
conversation, "Wait, you
Or is it
know about nano
both?
banana? How did you know
Yeah,
about that?"
and it's like I have to wait for you to say it before I can say it because I'm like, wait, is that real? The through line to me is we've gone through at least 2 changes of logo since I've been at the company, and the logo, if you look at Google today, our logo right now, the through line is on the E, where the E is turned and it's like a little bit of a smiling E.
Are you doing this because of our logo? You
It
know that
did
that's like
it did remind I can see that E, and I think that subtly, subconsciously did make me think of this. But if you look at Google sometime, look
it's
at
a little
that last
quirky.
little quirky. Yeah.
I love that because I do love wildly symmetrical brands. We are a brand agency. We do that kind of stuff too. And my designers will probably laugh at this comment, but I am really into symmetry or just mathematically fine logos. Like I want to make sure it all makes sense mathematically. But then when we were doing well, I'm sure it's this way for Google. How do you inject some personality into all that? So something's got to be a little bit 2 degrees off center, and make people go like, "Why'd you do that?" And like, that's the question I wanted you to ask. Why'd I do that?
Yeah.
I never knew that about Google. That's amazing. So the E is just a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, it's a little quirky.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more brain squeezer question before we get to like wrapping this up. When does the design instinct beat the research? It's kind of like what I'm just saying just now about, the quirkiness in something versus being so scientifically perfect or mathematically perfect. So when is that design instinct you're just like, no, 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 no. It just feels better than what the research is telling me. Do you have to deal with that a lot?
I do. I do have to deal with yeah, I have to deal with that a lot. And it's funny because at Google, I've done both roles. I have led design teams and I've led research teams, and I've led both actually. I've had in parts of my career, I was over both design and research. And there's definitely on healthy teams a conversation between those 2 roles. And I remember I'm not going to say who this is, but there's a guy. He's kind of famous designer. He's no longer at Google, but he was. And there was a PM that would say, "Hey, we want to be really data driven," and he would always stop the meeting and say, "No, no, no. We want to be data informed." It was like really important to him that we said we're data informed and not data driven, because the implication being like the data says do this, we do that, and we're not quite that. And I think healthy design cultures aren't that way. And it's out of a humility that if you know anything about research, you know that like research can be very seductive in feeling very certain of things. But man, it's all about the setup in research, right? Like, what were the stories? What were people trying to do? What were they told they were trying to do? Is this a sentiment type thing, or is it like a behavior type thing? And it's just it's wonderfully messy and difficult to do well. And there's a real art to doing UX research well. And so, yeah, there's lots of times when the data will say do things one way and we go a different direction, especially around things like logo design or iconography, and then you've got the problem of change aversion where, that's forever clouding what research brings back, or not clouding, but it's forever a factor in interpretation of research. So, you've got people's initial reaction to, let's say, generative AI or anything new. and there's a healthy skepticism to new things that humans have, a tendency to, evoke or say or behave. And so, the thing I always say with change aversion is like, look, the thing that you're offering has to be worth the change aversion, right? That's a simple way to think about it. If you're offering something that just isn't that much better, but it's a change, I'm going to stay with what I got. I'm going to keep using traditional email because it's not worth it, right? But then and so some people are like, well, then if that's true, how would you ever advance technology? Well, but the answer is the technology has to be pretty good, right? That's all. Like if it's actually a lot better than the way I was doing it, humans are damn quick to change, like smartphones, like, there's no more BlackBerries because smartphones are just that much better. So they pretty quickly abandoned a physical keyboard because it was that much better. All right. And there was change aversion. People had to learn how to do
Huge change aversion. Yes.
huge change aversion.
Yeah.
And yet they did it in droves because the net positive was that much better.
You're
So,
reminding me of something. When the Apple phone came out, they didn't have copy and paste.
yeah, I remember that.
And I'm like, you probably would have sold just a few more phones.
You would have.
If you had just included one
that was
more
a
little
big deal.
feature.
I remember that too, actually. Yeah, I was like,
And
what?
I actually waited because I was like, come on, like this is like simple things. It does require a lot of folks out there to be the ones that are going to be leaping for us and being the ones to kind of think about where things can go. And I'm really appreciative that we have you working in a great place like Google to be thinking like that for all of us, because it's a really hard thing. I mean, it's like, where do we go next? And I love that. I love for you that you get to explore that every day. That's so much fun. I'm going to do a quick smash or pass on something, if you know what that means. Electric cars, smash or pass?
Smash.
Yeah, me too. Okay. All right. I was going to just say, for all those folks out there that the EV industry is kind of waning again. And I'm like, what are you people thinking? Just go test drive one and tell me, even if you can't afford it, just go test drive one so you can change your opinion about what these cars are all about. And tell me that's not the future.
I'm a big smash on that. We have only electric cars now, and really like cars, and I have built a car from the ground up, a mechanical car, gas car, and I have a nostalgia for cars, and the electric cars are awesome.
When you said about the change aversion, it just made me think immediately, like, this is the biggest thing right now that people are against. And I don't know why.
I've been really impressed with mine, and it's not that there are no drawbacks. Just like there were some drawbacks, like they didn't have copy and paste, like you said, right, at first. But I think those things will pretty quickly iron themselves out. And yeah, I don't see myself going back.
No, I don't. I'm not going back. No,
Yeah.
we're only electric as well. Our daughters do have regular gas cars that we handed down to them. But as we were moving into the next vehicle, even my wife said, she's like, I give up. We got to go electric. I'm like, you got to go electric. Just to end things up, I think one more thing to just ask you, because you're in a great position at Google, and you are, we didn't want to talk about this today either, Robert, but you're in a position that maybe you didn't expect to be in. You have a lot of people you got to call, you got to like work on. Like, Aaron, I have to know if I have to keep the office open today because there's a little bit of ice on the road. Just ridiculous. We have to deal with every day. But if people are out there looking for a new role, they're emerging into the industry, they're leaving school, and they're trying to look for that first job, what kind of things does Google look for, especially in the division of Google that you work on?
Well, we've already talked a little bit about curiosity and sort of that spirit. I'd like to believe that there's a component of that in our hiring. I think Google is a good company to work for, and I'd like to think it's still a desirable place to work, and with good benefits and all the rest. It's a good job. So I think there's sort of table stakes, like. Typically, people have to, have table stakes understanding of computer science or whatever field they're going into. Or in my case, it might be some type of, social science research background. But I got a lot of people on my team that don't have PhDs, so that's not a hard requirement. I think typically now to kind of break into Google, you do have to have some experience, but there's lots of ways I see people getting that experience. They may have done internships. They may have done, summer jobs at places where they got experience with web or, some type of technology. A lot of people now go to can go to contracting. There's companies that kind of contract with Google and might do research with us on certain key topics. And that can be a way to kind of break into the business, if you will, either on the design or research side. You briefly mentioned the apprentice program in Zurich. I'd love to see the US invest more in apprenticeship type programming. I'd also love to see us have more electric cars. So one day.
I think eventually the US will come back around and start making more
I think
investments.
so too. I think this is actually a really prime time for us to be rethinking that, as we see, we could have a whole nother hour on higher education and how it needs to be reformed a little bit, I think.
I could really live in that space. I was at a conference a couple of years ago. This is more than a few years ago. And it was the first time I'd really gotten a chance to get out of the office. And I signed up for every class. My schedule was back to back to back to back to back. And I remember going between class 2 and 3 going out loud, I could live here. Like I said that out loud. And it was just because every class I was learning something so exciting and new.
Yeah.
And I had at that moment had forgotten how much I enjoyed learning those kind of things and living in that environment and being part of folks that just enjoy and love learning. And I love this time that you and I are in, where we can now use AI and also explore other kinds of methods of interacting with people where there's this new level of currency. It's like, how are we all learning together? And I just love that. I just love that for all of us.
I do too.
And I do think I would agree. I mean, if anybody's out there looking for opportunities with an organization, as like, I don't know if there's a company in the world that's higher profile than Google, but there are only so many ways to really kind of break into a market without, you've got to put a lot of effort in. And having that level of curiosity and being out there and just looking for those opportunities and being very opportunistic about those learning opportunities too is just a critical aspect of the job that you're in. And you need to look for those people that are hungry to learn, right?
Hungry to learn, yeah. One last thing that I'll say on this. I was in a meeting one time talking about this subject internally at Google, and we were going around the room kind of talking about, well, it was for the purposes of actually talking about what should the hiring criteria be. And I said, we were talking about something else, and then we switched to this, and it kind of caught me off guard, like smash or pass style. Like I was like, and I just said what I was thinking. And I said, I wish there was a way we could measure someone's sense of humor. And everybody laughed. Everybody laughed at me, and they were like, Rob, you're so funny, like you have a great sense of humor. I was like, no, I'm dead. Like, I really think having a good sense of humor is a really good indicator of intelligence, grit, health,
Yeah.
curiosity, like a love of life, like all these things that I think actually really predict who's going to do well in a kind of quirky environment where things aren't like absolutely cookie cutter and you kind of making it up as you go. And I think it's really important actually that you have a sense of humor. And I will go so far as on this recording to say, I also look for that when I hire people. Do they have it? It doesn't have to be like a ha funny sense of humor, but there's a certain way of looking at the world of like, that's kind of funny.
We want to find people that are memorable, and that's a very positive way to set, that memory card with folks, so that you're very open and humble. And I think humor does open a lot of doors for folks, and they kind of lose that. I think that's also the joy of life. And you want to be around people that, really embrace life and really can take all the good things in. So I'm 100% with you. I really do love humor too. And sometimes I kind of bring it up at the wrong time. So sorry for everybody that listens to this and wonders like, oh my God, Aaron, why did you do? I'm just trying to be myself. It's all it is. Just trying to be myself. Just like, the people at the Goog. But this has been great. Robert, you are such a fantastic person to get to know. And I hope everybody has enjoyed this podcast today. Got a little more insight into how things operate at Google and more about what kind of thinking goes on there and what's driving our future. And I think you guys will be really excited that people like Robert are there at the helm to get folks at Google really thinking and laughing about the future, what we can do with it. So I really appreciate this time today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you guys want to find out where Robert's hanging out at Google, you can Google him. That'll be easy. But you can also find him on LinkedIn. Robert Youmans. We'll put the link here on the screen. Robert, this has been absolutely fantastic. So much fun to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time. Reminiscing and talking about the future. Both fun.
Yes, so much fun. Okay, everybody, we hope you will stay tuned for our next episode of Sound of Inbound on soundofinbound.com. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and all sorts of other social channels. So please catch us there. Robert, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the Sound of Inbound.